Hi everyone and welcome to WowCon. It's an honour to have been asked by Right Mentor to do a video for this online convention that's especially aimed at people who cannot usually attend regular conventions, such as myself. So who am I? I'm Sophie Cleverly. I'm the author of the Scarlet and Ivy series of middle grade mysteries, and I also have an MA in writing for young people. So what am I here to talk about? Well, many of us face obstacles in our daily lives that get in the way of writing, whether this is physical or mental health problems, raising children, or just struggling with motivation, as many of us do. I personally have several chronic illnesses. I have Crohn's disease, I have polycystic kidney disease, and I also have hypermobility syndrome. And as well as that, I'm the mum of a 9-month-old baby. So in terms of obstacles, I kind of have the whole 500-metre hurdles. So this talk is going to be my top 10 tips for overcoming obstacles and how to write when everything is wrong. I always wanted to be a writer ever since I was very young, but I always sort of considered it to be something that you couldn't really do as a career, and I always thought I would probably have to have something else as my full-time job. When I was in sixth form, I was already starting to get really ill, so I wanted to do something at university that I would be able to cope with. And I began to think to myself that maybe I should study creative writing, and I knew that there was kind of no guarantee of a job or anything at the end of it, but I knew that was something that I was really interested in, and I could study it nearby to where I lived, so I wouldn't have to move away from home. So I went to Bath Spa to study creative writing, and I really loved it, but again I still had this thing in the back of my mind that I wouldn't be able to do it as a job. So I was always intending to go into teaching as well, and I actually signed up to do the PGCE. But I soon realised that I probably wasn't going to have good enough health to do that. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought perhaps I should just try and pursue my dreams. If most things were going to be too difficult for me to do, then perhaps I should just try to be a writer, because that was what I really wanted to do after all. So I changed from being signed up to the PGCE to being signed up to the MA in writing for young people, because that had always been my favourite subject at university. And this actually turned out really well. I really enjoyed the MA, even though my health was really bad and I did struggle a lot. I had great fun, I met some amazing writers, and it was also where I started writing Scarlet and Ivy, and I worked on my manuscript for The Lost Twin as my main project for the MA. Once I left the MA, I thought again that I was really going to need some sort of job in order to make a living. So I ended up going to work on the phones in a mortgage company, which was a really bad idea because I have really bad phone anxiety. And I thought this might help make it better, but it actually made it worse. And on top of that, it was also very tiring and difficult to do with my health problems. And I ended up getting really severely ill, and I had to have surgery. But I was really lucky that at that point I had finished the MA and we had sent out our anthology to lots of different agents and editors around the UK, and I was actually starting to get some interest in my book. And thankfully I got some real attention from HarperCollins, and that led to me getting an agent. And because of that, I was able to quit my job, which was having a really severe detriment to my health, and focus full-time on writing. But even with writing full-time, I still find it very difficult with my illness and of course with raising my baby girl, which means I have very little time to do work. So I have spent a lot of time thinking about how I can overcome these obstacles that are getting in the way of my writing and how to make my writing time more productive. And so here is the list of things that really helped me. Number 1, build a routine. So you might be familiar with spoon theory, which is a thing that people with chronic illness use to describe our energy levels and how we ration them out. So you only get so many spoons per day, so it might be that you need to use some of your spoons for having a shower and some of your spoons for cooking dinner, and so you only get a few for doing other things such as writing. So spoons can apply to both physical energy and mental energy, and it's something that everyone needs to think about, but obviously people with chronic illness or other pressures on their time and energy need to think about a lot more than other people. So thinking about this, it's a really good idea to try and build a solid writing routine where you don't use up too many of your spoons by doing it. It's better to write little and often than to write in a huge burst and then not be able to write anything for weeks. You should always aim for a good life routine and a good writing routine if you possibly can. And the two work together, so don't stay up writing until 3 a.m. if you know it's going to make you feel really bad the next day and make you unable to write anything. I find that having a small amount of time to write in can actually sometimes be better as you focus a lot more and you don't spend your time going off on Twitter or that sort of thing. And my top tip for this kind of writing rationing is to always try and end your writing on a cliffhanger, something you're excited about, or even just in the middle of a sentence, so that you can really easily carry on when you come back to writing. Number 2, have flexible goals. If you search for writing advice online, you'll find an awful lot of people telling you that you're not a real writer unless you write every single day. And this is something that a lot of people I know get very upset about, and they really take it to heart and think, I can't possibly be a real writer if I don't write every single day. And I just want to say that this is complete nonsense. I absolutely don't write every day, and I have written 6 books so far, nearly 7, so it's definitely not true. The important thing when it comes to writing is dedication to finishing. No matter how long it takes, once you've got something that's finished, you can always edit it and improve it. If you don't finish, then you can't do that. So it doesn't matter if you write every single day, as long as you finish whatever you start. So rather than having a goal of writing every single day, I try to change my goals all the time depending on what is realistic and achievable for me. So one day it might just be just write a sentence, and another day it might be write 1,000 words. And I try to always keep this flexible so that I don't get too much pressure to constantly be writing, because I just don't have the time and energy to do that. Another important thing to remember about your flexible goals is to never beat yourself up for not reaching them, and I will say more about that a bit later. I usually find that writing balances out in the end, no matter how much you do. It's because one day you're going to write a really small amount, but one day you'll maybe write a bigger amount. And if it's not balancing out when you're on a deadline, then that is where the next tip comes in. Number 3, be open and honest with the people you work with. So if there's anyone who's waiting for your writing, whether it is your teacher or your critique group, or an editor, then you really need to let them know what you're going through. And this is something that I really struggled with for a long time, especially when I was at university. I really felt that teachers would think I was lazy or trying to avoid doing work if I went and asked for an extension. So I tried to not ask for as long as possible. And that just meant that I got quite burnt out because I really didn't actually have the energy to do the work. But eventually, one day, when I was far too ill and I'd ended up in hospital on my MA, I realised that I was going to have to ask for an extension. So I did, and I found that my MA tutors were actually really understanding, and they let me have extra time to finish the manuscript that I was working on, which was actually for The Lost Twin, my first book. So I learnt from that I really needed to let people know when I was struggling and ask for help, and that they wouldn't always react in a bad way if I did that. Now I find with my publishers that they are super understanding as well. So I always let them know when they are asking me about deadlines, what I think I can realistically do. If I'm having any problems with making the deadline, I let them know. If I have to go into hospital or I'm just particularly ill or really struggling with certain points, I always tell them, and they're always really understanding, and they've even sent me flowers before when I've told them that I'm ill, so that's really nice. Think of it this way, you can either tell people that you're struggling or not tell them, but if you don't tell them, then you definitely won't get any help, and if you do tell them, there's a chance that they might react badly, but it's actually very unlikely, and you're a lot more likely to get the help and the extra time that you need. Number 4, put your mental and physical health first. So all writing is the fruit of the imagination. So imagine for a moment that you are a beautiful tree. So if you're not fed and watered and you don't have the right conditions, then it's going to be impossible to grow fruit. And that is just generally true of people and writing. That means you need to use your energy to look after yourself before you use it for writing. And that's something that I really struggle with, especially when I'm on a deadline or I have anything that I think of as important work that needs to be done. Because in my brain I think, I need to be doing this, otherwise I am a terrible person who is not working. But if I am not doing well, if I am mentally in a bad place or physically unwell, then I will not be able to do that writing to a good standard, or maybe even at all. So I really need to make sure that I look after myself first and that I take time for self-care so that I am able to do the best writing that I can. If there's a day where I think writing is going to be completely impossible, I try to just set myself a tiny goal, a tiny little thing to just keep my foot in the door of my world so that I can go back there easily whenever I need to. So that might be just writing one sentence. It might be daydreaming about my characters or what could happen next in the book. Just anything at all. It can be absolutely tiny as long as it just keeps you thinking about your writing. 5. Find ways to adapt. Obviously, what adaptations you need to make is going to depend a lot on which things are putting pressure on your time and energy, whether it's an illness or children or whatever. If writing is physically difficult, there are things you can do to help with that. So obviously I have hypermobility and I have quite a lot of pain in my hands and wrists because apparently I'm cursed. So I wear wrist supports to help me with my writing. I also have an ergonomic keyboard and mouse, and I have a chair with a back support so I can try and get the right position for writing. I also often have to use things like ice packs or ibuprofen gel to soothe the pain in my wrists and mean that I can carry on writing. I also do physiotherapy, and I often do that while sitting at my writing desk to give me something else to help out my joints while I'm writing. If you have a physical issue that is getting in the way of writing, you might even want to look into voice typing software. And one of my favourite authors, Terry Pratchett, used a lot of voice typing software in his later books when he was suffering with Alzheimer's. So it's a really useful tool for writers who struggle to physically write. If it's more about a lack of time, then maybe think about places where you can squeeze writing into your daily schedule. And having something portable to write on really helps with this, I find, whether that's a laptop or a tablet or even a phone. I actually do a lot of writing on my phone, and although that seems quite strange to a lot of people, it's really good because it means you can carry on writing when you're travelling or when your kids are playing or when you're in bed or whatever's going on. It's really portable. And the advantage of a phone over something like a notepad is that you can send the work straight to yourself and just put it straight into your document, or you can even work on the same document by using things like Dropbox. And as I said before, I actually find that having only a small amount of time to write in can really help with your focus, because you really have to do writing and not just go off doing other things on social media. I once heard some writing advice that says it doesn't have to be good, it just has to exist, and that's something I think about a lot. So you don't need to worry if you've typed the roughest draft ever on your phone. As long as it exists, you can edit it and you can make it better. 6. Don't compare yourself to everyone else. This is a lot easier said than done, and it's something that everyone does. When you start out as a writer, you often find yourself thinking, oh, how come this person has got an agent and I don't? Or how come this person has got a book deal and I don't? And the trouble is that the goalposts are always shifting, because when you actually have an agent and a book deal, you then start looking at other authors and thinking, why does this person have a movie deal and I don't? Or why is this person winning awards and I've never been nominated for anything? And it's just a really normal thing that everyone does, to worry that you're not doing as well as everyone else. I find that this is especially bad for people with a chronic illness, or people who are really low on time and energy for whatever reason, because you look on Twitter and you see people saying, I get up at 5 a.m. every single day and I go for a jog, and then I do 6 school events, and then I write 10 chapters every single day. That is really amazing if you are a person who can do that, but for most of us it is not a realistic goal in any way. So I've really found that I need to set my own pace and try really hard not to think about what everyone else is doing. So I have never got up at 5 a.m. in my life. I definitely can't jog, and I maybe do 6 school events in an entire year if I'm lucky. But it's still fine. My publishing career is going absolutely fine. And you just don't need to do all those things. It's amazing if you can, but you don't have to. And someone, and it may have been the lovely Beth Revis, once said to me that you can never be J.K. Rowling. You can only be the best you that you can be. And that's something I always have to remind myself about. So it's really difficult, but you need to try and recognise your own successes and ignore everyone else's. Well, not necessarily ignore them. You can still be happy for them and you can congratulate them, but try not to let it get you down when other people are doing well, because you are doing so well too. 7. Use the internet wisely. So there are obviously good and bad points about the internet, but let's start with the good. The internet can be a lifeline to your support network, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that in the next section. With modern technology, you can research and plan and workshop your books from home. You can promote them, so you can run social media accounts, you can run campaigns and giveaways and newsletters to help promote your books. You could even join in an online conference like this one. When it comes to things like interviews, you can do them by Skype or even just over email, which is really great if you are unable to leave the house, or if you have any level of anxiety about talking to people face to face or over the phone. And of course, the main downside for writing with the internet is that it's so tempting to spend all your time doing these things and to convince yourself that it is work. Which it is still work. It's still very important to research and to promote your book and all those things. But just make sure that you portion out your time sensibly, so that you still have some time that is just for writing and where you're not going on the internet and interacting and doing social things. 8. Find a support network. It's so easy to feel like you're alone and that you're the only person struggling, especially if you spend a lot of time on social media when most people are only putting their successes and their best days and the photos of when things are going really well. You have to remember that you are never alone. So many people are struggling with being parents or being ill or working a difficult job, and not everyone is having their best day all the time. These are things that even the most successful writers are struggling with, even though you may not know about it. So my top tip for this one is to look for support groups, whether that's an online support group or something in person that you can join. There are so many out there, whether they're for writers or for parents or for people with chronic illness. I often find that just by searching on Facebook for the specific thing you're looking for, you might find one. If you can't find any, perhaps try asking some other writers online if they know of any groups, or even why not try starting your own group online or in person, and then you'll meet many people who are in the same boat as you. So Twitter is a great place to find people to connect with, especially if you use the chat hashtags. So obviously there is Write Mentor, our lovely hosts. That is a great one to have a look at and find other writers to connect with. There are also the monthly chats such as UK Middle Grade Chat, UK Picture Book Chat, UK YA Chat. All of those are really great places to chat with other writers about writing and reading and anything that you're struggling with. Number 9, make a to-do list and reward yourself. So I always have struggled with motivation and also with just remembering what I need to do. So I find to-do lists really helpful. And I used to just always use scraps of paper, which became very messy. But I've since found that there are apps and websites and things that you can use to keep to-do lists, which are a much better way of keeping track of things. So my favourite is Habitica, which not sponsored, but I just like them. And they are a fun kind of gamified to-do list where you make a little character and you can collect items of clothing for your character to wear and pets and things like that. And it's a really great way to keep track of all your tasks, and you can also set daily goals, which is really great for writing. And you can set rewards as well. So as well as just the little in-game rewards, you can also set your own rewards. I think that rewarding yourself is a really key part of the writing process, and I personally find it really effective. So I'm definitely more of a carrot person than a stick person. You can completely tailor rewards to what works for you. So it might be, if I write 500 words, then I can check Twitter. Or if I finish this chapter, then I can eat a chocolate bar. Or maybe it's, if I finish writing this whole manuscript, I can buy that dress that I really, really want. And sometimes you cheat and buy the dress anyway, but that's fine. Don't beat yourself up about it too much. It's just a really fun way to increase your motivation and to keep rewarding yourself for what you can do. 10. Celebrate every success. So whatever challenges you're facing, it's really important to remember to celebrate every little thing that you manage to do despite them. You've got to remember that the more obstacles you're facing, you're essentially playing life on hard mode. And that means it's a really great thing whenever you manage to succeed. So maybe you don't yet have an agent or a book deal, but if you manage to finish writing that first draft, then that is a huge achievement and you should be really proud of yourself. It's so easy to forget, but you need to celebrate every single small moment. And even if it's okay to have really big goals, don't get yourself down and worry that you're not reaching them. It can be so easy to build up your goals too much and to think, my life will only be complete when my book is on the shelf. But as I said before, those goalposts can keep shifting. So you need to stay down to earth and just think about how well you've done by doing each small thing. So take a look at what you've already done instead. Maybe if you haven't even finished a whole book, maybe you finished a really good chapter, whatever it is that you've managed to do. See how far you've come. You've survived every one of your bad days so far. So be proud of yourself and keep on writing. Thank you so much for watching my video about overcoming obstacles. I do hope some of this has been helpful. I'm obviously not a perfect person and I am not even great at following my own advice a lot of the time, but I have found that a lot of these strategies have been really helpful to me with writing. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about, please don't hesitate to get in touch and ask me about it. I can be found on Twitter. My username is @hapfairy. Thank you to Write Mentor for having me. I'm so excited for the rest of WowCon and to watch everyone else's videos. I will also be running a workshop on writing a series later this weekend. I think having an online convention is a really fabulous idea, and I hope that as many people as possible will be able to join in and get a lot out of this. Bye everybody!